Welcome, friends. It was a cold evening. The bus rattled softly through the empty streets. A young single mom sat by the window, her baby wrapped in an old blue blanket. She looked tired, her eyes half open, her body trembling from exhaustion. Life hadn't been kind to her. She worked 2 jobs, skipped her own meals just so her baby could eat. As the bus moved, her baby started to cry softly. The man sitting beside her, a well-dressed stranger in a navy coat, looked over. Without saying a word, he offered his handkerchief and smiled gently. She hesitated for a moment, then accepted it. The baby slowly fell asleep, and soon, so did she. Her head rested on the man's shoulder. The man didn't move. He looked down at her face, tired, peaceful, full of pain, and something inside him changed. He remembered his own mother, who once struggled the same way before he became a successful CEO. His eyes softened. He took off his coat and gently covered the woman and her child so they could stay warm. When the bus stopped, the woman woke up suddenly, realizing what had happened. Embarrassed, she whispered, "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." The man interrupted softly, "You don't need to apologize. You've already done more than enough just by surviving." Tears filled her eyes as she saw the folded note he left on her lap. A note with his business card and the words, "Come tomorrow. I have a job for you. No mother should struggle alone." She clutched the card close to her heart, whispering thank you under her breath. Friends, sometimes kindness comes from the most unexpected places. Never lose hope, because miracles still ride the same buses we do. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. This is Soul of Kindness. The next morning, the single mom stood outside a tall glass building in disbelief. She looked up at the sign. It was one of the biggest companies in the city. Her heart pounded. The baby in her arms stirred softly, as if sensing her fear. She whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mama's just trying." She hesitated at the door, her worn-out shoes squeaking on the marble floor as she stepped in. People in suits passed by, their eyes full of importance. She felt small, invisible. A woman who had spent her nights cleaning offices like this just to survive. But then she saw him. The same man from the bus, the one whose shoulder had given her rest when she had none. He was standing by the elevator, smiling warmly, holding a cup of coffee in his hand. She froze. He walked toward her and said softly, "You came. I was hoping you would." Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought you were just being kind that night." He shook his head gently. "Kindness doesn't end on a bus stop." He led her into his office, a place filled with success, yet somehow peaceful. He told her, "I grew up poor too. My mother worked herself sick just so I could study. When I saw you last night, it felt like seeing her again. You deserve better." He handed her a folder, a job offer, a stable income, medical support, childcare help, things she never dared to dream about. Her hands trembled as she held the paper. She whispered, "Why? Why would you do this for me?" He smiled softly, looking at the baby in her arms. "Because I know what it means to fight alone, and because your strength reminded me that goodness still exists." She couldn't stop the tears now. For the first time in years, those tears weren't from pain, they were from hope. She clutched the job letter to her heart and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." The man looked at her with gentle eyes. "No one deserves to be unseen. You're stronger than you know." Days turned into weeks, and life began to bloom again for the struggling single mom. She now worked at the CEO's company, not as a charity case, but as someone who had proven her strength and honesty. Every morning she arrived early. Her baby left safely at the company's daycare that the CEO himself had arranged. For the first time, she didn't have to worry about choosing between work and her child. One evening, as everyone left the office, she stayed behind to finish her files. The lights outside the skyscraper shimmered against the glass walls, and the city hummed below like a distant dream. She sat there, quietly thanking God for the life she once thought she'd lost. Suddenly there was a soft knock on the door. It was him, the CEO, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here," he said with a smile. "You remind me too much of myself. I used to work late just like this." She smiled back, a little shy. I just want to do my best. You've given me more than I ever hoped for." He placed the coffee on her desk and said, "No, you earned it. You were never broken. You just needed someone to remind you of your worth." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what those words mean to someone who's been told. She's nothing." He looked at her, voice soft but full of emotion. "I know exactly what that feels like. My mother was told the same thing until one day someone believed in her. That's what you deserve too." She lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "You've changed my life, sir. But I still don't know how to thank you." He smiled gently. "By never giving up again. By showing your child that love and strength can rebuild anything." At that moment, her baby's laughter echoed down the hallway, the sound of pure innocence and hope. Both of them turned toward the door, smiling. The CEO walked over and gently lifted the baby into his arms. The child giggled and touched his face, as if recognizing a friend from another lifetime. The woman watched silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. The man said softly, "He's smiling because he feels safe. That's what I want for both of you." The night outside was calm, and in that quiet room, 3 hearts, broken, healed, and innocent, came together in a way words could never explain. Friends, sometimes life brings strangers together not by chance, but by purpose, to remind us that love and kindness can heal what the world once broke. Months passed, and the single mom's life had completely changed. The pain that once lived in her eyes was slowly replaced by peace. She had a steady job, a warm home, and a future she could finally believe in. Every morning, she held her baby close before leaving for work, whispering, "We made it, my love. We really made it." One rainy afternoon, the company was hosting an annual event, the CEO's biggest charity, Gala of the Year. The hall glittered with lights and people in elegant suits and dresses. The single mum stood at the back, holding a tray of documents, never imagining she'd belong in a place like this. But the CEO had insisted she come, saying, "You're part of this story too." As the speeches began, the CEO walked up to the stage. The crowd fell silent. He looked around, his gaze soft but full of meaning. "Every success I've ever had," he began, "was built on someone's sacrifice, on the love of a woman who never gave up. No matter how hard life became. I lost my mother before I could thank her. But not long ago, I met someone who reminded me of her strength. A woman who fought alone, yet never stopped believing in love for her child." He paused, his eyes searching the room until they landed on her. She froze, her heart racing. "She doesn't know I'm about to do this," he continued with a smile. "But tonight, I want everyone to meet the bravest person I've ever known." The lights followed his gaze as he said her name. The crowd turned. Shocked, she stepped forward, trembling, clutching her hands together. Applause filled the room. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she reached the stage. The CEO looked at her and said quietly, so only she could hear, "You've inspired more hearts than you realize." She whispered back, her voice breaking, "I was just trying to survive." He nodded. "And in doing that, you taught us what real strength looks like." The audience watched as she cried openly, not out of sadness, but from the overwhelming warmth of being seen. Finally, for who she was, the CEO handed her a small envelope and said, "This is for your new home, and for your child's education. You gave the world your courage. Let the world give you something back." The hall erupted in applause once again. She covered her face, unable to hold back the sobs of gratitude. The CEO placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." At that moment, her baby, sitting in the front row with the daycare staff, clapped his tiny hands, laughing innocently. The whole hall smiled. It was as if that little laugh carried a message: hope always wins. A year later, the city was covered in golden sunlight. The once struggling single mom now walked through the same park where she used to sit crying, wondering how to feed her baby. But today her baby was running ahead of her, healthy, laughing and full of life. Her clothes were neat, her eyes peaceful, her smile real. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. As she watched her child play, A familiar voice called out softly from behind, "You still come here?" She turned. It was the CEO standing there with that same gentle smile. He looked different now too, calmer, warmer, as if kindness had become part of who he was. She smiled. "I used to come here to escape my pain. Now I come here to thank life for how far we've come." He walked closer, looking at her child. "He's grown so fast." She nodded. "He asks about you sometimes. He calls you the man with the kind eyes." The CEO laughed softly, then grew quiet. "You know, that night on the bus changed my life too. I thought I was successful because of my company, but you showed me that true success is being able to change someone's story." Her eyes glistened with emotion. "You didn't just change my story. You gave my child a future." He smiled gently. "No, you gave yourself that future. I just reminded you that you deserved it." The wind blew softly through the trees. The little boy ran toward them holding a yellow flower. "Mommy, this is for you," he said, placing it in her hand. Then he looked up at the CEO and added shyly, "And one for you too, Uncle." The CEO knelt down, taking the flower carefully. "Thank you, buddy. I'll keep it forever." The woman looked at them. Two souls who had unknowingly saved her life in different ways. Her heart filled with gratitude so deep that tears silently rolled down her cheeks. The CEO stood up, watching her with gentle eyes. "You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "Just promise me you'll keep helping others the way I tried to help you." She nodded, her voice trembling. "I will, I promise." He smiled. "Then my mother's dream lives on, through you." They stood there for a long moment, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky with colors of hope. The little boy took both their hands and laughed as they walked together toward the playground, a symbol of a new beginning, born from one simple act of kindness. Friends, life has a way of connecting broken hearts and healing them through compassion. Sometimes one small moment of love can rewrite someone's entire destiny. Always choose kindness, because you never know whose miracle you might become. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. This is Soul of Kindness.